Hey guys, welcome back to some more reviews, and today talking about A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child, which came out in 1989, gets a 5.1 on IMDb, written by Stephen Hopkins, who would do Race, which is a newer movie. Let me go on the director's filmography list. The Dangerous Game, Predator 2, which that was actually a pretty decent sequel, pretty underrated. Predator 2, Judgment Night, Blown Away, Lost in Space, which I heard about. The Reaping, and did a bunch of TV stuff. And this was sort of one of his first movies. I mean, this is the second movie he's done. And A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child, used to be a movie I defended a lot. In the past, I wasn't a big fan of the movie, but in the past, I tried to defend the movie. And watching it now, I'm not really sure why I did that, because this movie is bad. And I would say it is a bad movie. This is a rant. It is a bad sequel. But there's still a few things I didn't mind about the movie. It wasn't total garbage. One is that the idea of of the dream child, the idea that Freddy Krueger is trying to be reborn through Alice's child. It's definitely a different approach, and it's definitely a newer idea. And it was different, but I mean, it was a decent idea. I didn't mind the idea, and it was decent. So yeah, the whole idea of Freddy Krueger trying to become Alice's baby and trying to turn her baby evil and stuff like that, and trying to be reborn, decent idea, creepy idea, and also the music was kind of good. Actually, the score is pretty decent, and it was sort of a mix between this dream score and a creepy child score, and you mix together and you got this sort of dream, creepy child score to it, which fit the movie, fit the subject matter of the movie. And so yeah, the music was pretty decent. The idea, I didn't mind. The main plot, I didn't mind. The practical effects were pretty decent. But really, besides that, the atmosphere, as you guys know, Nightmare on Elm Street 4, that atmosphere was sort of half and half. The MTV look to it, sometimes it helped the movie, sometimes it didn't. Sometimes it made the movie, look look pretty creepy, and had a good atmosphere sometimes. And then sometimes it made it look a little bit fake. Here, there's this look with they take that fake look, and they put it to the entire movie. The sets look pretty fake. There's nothing really to the atmosphere. The atmosphere is set around sort of an asylum. These dreams are sort of in these different places of an asylum. I know there's like one where it's like a pipe, like basically a room full of like pipes and stuff like that. And it was more of just like a grayish look to it. I know there was also a swimming pool scene, but some of the dreams take place in an asylum, and most of the atmosphere looked kind of fake. Set design, the way that it looked was kind of fake, and the way the movie was shot was kind of cheesy. And these characters in this movie really weren't that likable. There was maybe like, I don't know, 3 characters that were likable, and that was Alice, Dan, and Mark. Those were probably the only 3 characters that were likable. The rest of them I didn't really care about. The Yvonne character, Greta, not really likable characters, nothing really much to them. And the death scenes are pretty lame. Although a big part about this movie with death scenes is that it's sort of like Friday the 13th Part 7 New Blood, where these death scenes would have been a little bit more gorier if the MPAA wouldn't have, went in and shredded the scenes with basically the kill scenes. If the MPAA wouldn't have went in and shredded those scenes to bits, then it would have some pretty gory death scenes, but they cut up these death scenes so much they're kind of confusing. Because Greta's death scene was supposed to be where she gets fed her insides and she's getting fed to death. Well, she gets like maybe 3 spoonfuls of food and her cheeks are all the way out here, and I'm like, with just 3 scoops of food, it really didn't make sense. And in the movie, they don't even mention the whole gut thing. I mean, they mention it later on when Mark's having his nightmare, like, because Freddy Krueger takes like his, the spoon and dips it in her insides and is getting ready to feed it to her. Well, during her actual death scene, I mean, you really didn't see that. You just seen him get some food off a plate and feed it to her until she pretty much is like this and she chokes to death and dies. And really wasn't much to that death scene. It was kind of confusing. It was like 3 freaking spoonfuls of food made her cheese stretch out to right here. It really didn't make sense. And Mark's death scene was pretty laughable, where the stupid idea of this sort of grayish atmosphere with this room full of pipes, and then he's running through and he turns into this action hero, fights Freddy, Super Freddy comes up. Like, basically Freddy Krueger's a Super Freddy, and it was a stupid idea. And pretty much when he cuts Mark, becomes a comic book, and he slashes him to pieces, but there's no blood because it's a piece of paper. Basically a paper mark, and it bleeds ink. So it's like, it bleeds like color and stuff like that. Not really a good death scene. And Dan's death scene is probably the most, graphic death scene of them all, where he's on a motorcycle and the motorcycle sort of just like forms claws and wires go into his hands and his legs and pretty much pulls his skin back on his face. But once again, it's like, during this death scene, there are these quick cuts that happen, and it sort of speeds the death scene up too fast, and you're just like, okay, so how did his freaking hand end up this messed up when there was maybe like 3 wires that went into his hand? Or how did this happen? Or it was just sort of like the MPA removed so much that it was starting to become really confusing death scenes. And with that, I mean, it was a small body count. There's probably 3 death scenes in the entire movie, and 2 of them were pretty lame. And the EMPA shredded into pieces, so death scenes weren't really there. Atmosphere was kind of fake looking. It didn't really look that good. Likeable characters, there was no likable characters. There was maybe 3. But besides that, the cast really was not likable. Some of the ideas of the movie was pretty forgettable. The whole idea of Alice dreaming about how Freddy Krueger, or dreaming about her being Amanda, and then about Amanda giving birth to Freddy Krueger and how he's all deformed in the dream. And he's like I said, there's like a baby Freddy Krueger, he's all deformed and stuff like that. Or Alice being like Amanda Krueger and in the room with the 100 maniacs, something like that. I think it's like 100 maniacs or something. And not really interesting ideas, and just the time between the death scenes really weren't that interesting. Mainly was Alice figuring out that Freddy Krueger is back, and that she's trying to convince her friends that Freddy Krueger is back, and her friends don't believe her. And one by one they get killed off, and I believe Yvonne almost dies, where she's on the diving board, and the diving board sort of turns into claws, and she tries to jump off into this small puddle of water. And then, of course, Alice saves her, takes like a pipe and shoves it right through Freddy Krueger's mouth, out the back of his head. And you find out that Freddy Krueger's afraid of Amanda Krueger. And at the beginning of the movie, Freddy Krueger is in baby form, and he basically grows back into Freddy Krueger. And I mean, Freddy in this movie doesn't really have a lot to do. I know that in part 2, I said that, he had stuff to do, but not a tremendous amount of stuff to do. Here, it was sort of less than that. Like, the death scenes were there. Like, he did 3 deaths. Like, there were 3 death scenes. There was that scene with Yvonne in the swimming pool. But then he'll just sort of pop up here and there, not really doing much. And it really wasn't a lot of Freddy Krueger in this movie. And even his lines weren't really that good in this movie. They didn't really, the makeup effect, the makeup, the look of Freddy Krueger in this movie didn't look that good. This look, the new makeup effects, which pretty much people say get worse every movie, but, even though makeup effects on Freddy Krueger look pretty lame, and at the end of the movie, pretty much Alice has to fight Freddy Krueger again, and she goes into this room with 100 maniacs, and she pretty much gets this spiked, baby carriage and shoves it right through Freddy Krueger, and he goes in this room with 100 maniacs, they tear him to pieces. And, he's not dead, of course, because it's in his dream. He's not dead. There's a scene where they're running up these stairs, and they're in different directions. Not really that interesting, honestly. And they get to this final place where, basically, I guess, Freddy Krueger is controlling this Jacob kid, because Jacob is Alice's son, but in dream form. Like, Alice sees Jacob in her dreams, and, Freddy Krueger is, like, convinced Jacob that, to be bad and stuff like that, to be evil. And, of course, Alice has Freddy Krueger come out of her. And it was a decent makeup effect where, her face turns into Freddy Krueger and, like, his head comes out of her head and stuff like that. But it was kind of a confusing idea because it was like, why did he do that? I get it. It was like, oh, he's trying to torture her or something like that, but it was kind of pointless. And then you have a stupid death scene, where Jacob decides, okay, I'm not gonna be evil, and he betrays Freddy Krueger, literally pukes on Freddy Krueger, and basically the 3 friends, Dan, Greta, and Mark, they come out of his back, they pull the baby out of Freddy Krueger's body, the baby Freddy Krueger, and Amanda takes it back, and then she has it in her stomach because it, deforms into her stomach. And you have that scene where she zooms out and there's a million doors that close. Not really a million, but like 15 doors that close. Like it goes like, because you think that she's like, you need to go now, get out of here. And while Alice and Jacob are getting ready to leave, I believe Jacob goes back into baby form again and goes inside Alice, like deforms and goes back into Alice. And Alice is getting ready to get out of the dream, and of course Amanda Krueger's like, oh, I gotta get out of here. And then Freddy Krueger's claw comes out of her stomach, and a shot that was confusing where she zooms out and a million doors, close, and I guess Amanda Krueger is trapped in there. There's like one door that finally closes, and that's it. And then, of course, you have Alice and her dad. The baby Jacob's fine, and they're in a park, and the movie ends with a stupid song, by the way. I hate that song they have. Just kind of pops in. It's like, it didn't really, I don't know, I don't know if it was Living in the Jungle. Was it? I can't remember what song it was, but it was a very, very out of place song it started playing. I was like, this is completely out of place. But yeah, the whole idea of Freddy Krueger trying to be reborn, I didn't mind that idea. And Alice pretty much in this movie doesn't really have the dream powers. So Lisa Wilcox did a good job as far as acting goes, and she was probably the best character in this movie was Alice. Lisa Wilcox played her very well, and it was just like Alice was in the movie, but she really didn't do a lot. And because she has the dream powers, I would think still probably, but she doesn't really use them. And you know, there's a lot of stuff between the kills. Like before the end of the movie, that whole stuff with her trying to figure out, like, the whole baby situation, and her going into this, she's gonna go figure out if she is pregnant or not, or to go check up on her baby. And while she's there, she sees Freddy Krueger inside of her stomach, and it wasn't really much of a scene. Um, and there was just a lot of stuff in between the kills and the death scenes that wasn't interesting. So that was kind of boring. And I just didn't care for, the in between stuff between the death scenes and before the end of the movie. The whole, trying to figure out how Freddy Krueger's killing her friend and stuff like that, and how to stop Freddy Krueger. I didn't really care for the whole space between the death scenes. Them trying to figure out how Freddy Krueger, like I said, them trying to figure out how Freddy Krueger came back and stuff like that. Like, it just wasn't really that interesting, and it was really boring. So yeah, I mean, the movie, there's a lot of problems in the movie. The atmosphere was kind of fake looking. I really didn't care for the way that it was shot. Um, Death scenes were weak. And there was maybe, in a small body count, maybe 3 death scenes. And, just the whole just the movie is that it felt like the movie, I don't know how to put it, man. It just, I don't know. The movie, I'm kind of dumbfounded right now because the movie felt, A, rushed, and B, it just didn't feel like it was that interesting of a movie. Like I said, there is good things to it though. The whole idea of Freddy trying to be reborn was a pretty decent idea. Makeup effects were pretty good when they were there. They were practical effects. I'll give them that. It was practical effects. The music was pretty good, except for that one song at the end of the movie, which was kind of felt out of place. But besides that, the score was pretty decent. And Alice, or at least Wilcox did a good job as Alice, so at least Alice was in there as a likable character. There were maybe 3 likable characters out of the bunch, so not really a good cast. So yeah, the main problem with this movie is that it's just a very rushed and uninteresting movie. So yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child, not a very interesting movie. Very, very rushed sequel. And yeah, the atmosphere looks fake. Barely in a small body count, and the death scenes were really confusing, and they weren't really that good. So yeah, that's my rant on Nightmare on Elm Street 5: The Dream Child. Thanks for watching my rant, and I will see you guys on the next review. Bye, guys.